This is the 21st season of Bass Talk Live. BTL is presented by Bass Cat Boats, Strike King Lures, AFTCO, Pro Guide Batteries, Spro, Gamakatsu, The Bass Tank, Denali Rods, Beatdown Outdoors, and Sunline.
BTL coming at you.
Good morning and welcome to another exciting edition of BTL Bass Talk Live, where we are going to talk about bass fishing. It's a 2-for-1 deal today on Bass Talk Live. We got a live show this morning. I wasn't originally going to do an 8:30 a.m. show. I was really just going to head to the lake. I've got Scott Palmer, the mad scientist from the Bass Tank, is towing my boat down, all rigged and ready. One transducer, one 16-inch graph up front. We're going to drop it in at Shawnee Twin Lakes at 11 a.m., and then we're going to do a live run-through of my setup, something we were going to do originally, and then I said, well, why don't we just do it live, and then we can kill two birds with one stone. And he said, okay. And then I've also been... I hinted a little bit at it on yesterday's show. I've also been talking with a couple people that I respect in the industry about rules, on just the rules in bass fishing that we all have to abide to if we sign up to fish something. And that one thing led to another, and we have Todd Castledine on today's show. What's up, Todd?
What's up, Matt?
What have you been up to?
Just fishing. Our season already started, so we've already got 2 tournaments underneath our belt. We got a third one this weekend, and then we go right into that to practicing for the Toyota. You know.
So how often do you? I've never asked you this. Like, do you keep track of every day that you're on the water? Like, how often do you fish a year? Like, out of 365 days, what is the number of days that you are on the water?
No clue. I mean that like
ballpark.
No clue.
Why don't you keep track of that?
So you know how people keep track. Oh, I can't say that. I can't say what I'm about to say.
Why?
You know how like people keep track of like 10-pounders. Like there's certain guys that like I caught. Like especially the guys that like live down here, like live on those lakes.
Like I've caught 143 10-pounders since 1987.
Dude, if you ask like. And they probably got way more than me. So I'm not saying I have a bunch. But it's like me and Russell always talked about it. We're like, well, how many of you caught? We're like, I don't know. I mean, we never even thought about keeping track of it.
Wait, you've caught You've caught so many 10-pounders that you can't keep track of them.
Yeah, we used to catch. We had some lakes where we'd catch one. Like there were times where we caught multiple ones in the day back in the day. So, I mean, we just never thought like after you catch like your first one, right? Your first one's a big one, and then second, third, and then you're out there practicing and you catch one the day before. We kept track more of the ones we caught in tournaments. Was way more.
How many tens have you weighed in a tournament?
Well, I don't know. Like, I don't know. I don't know now. I'd have to like.
I got you.
Like, I don't follow along. I don't know. All I know is like I knew how many. How about this? I kept way more track of how many tournaments I fished a year. So we used to. I think. I got up to 46 one year, and that's not
46 tournaments. That doesn't include like Tuesday nighters. That's weekend
I don't
tournaments.
Fish those. So none of those are weekday tournaments. Those are all like weekend tournaments where, they're not a Tuesday or Thursday nighters. I don't ever fish those. I live too far away from the lake.
So let me ask you this: have you ever had in any of those tournaments and series that you fish, an instance where after you've paid your entry fee or your deposit or something, they called up and said, hey, we're changing the rules midway through the season or after you've paid?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have any examples of that?
They've done it on scheduling, and the scheduling,
I mean, like rules, like straight up rules, like what you can and can't do, what's legal, what's not legal, not a act of God rescheduling.
Yes, they have if the rule, they've amended a rule. So like to where maybe there was a rule in there about yes. I can't give an example. I can't give an exact example because it's happened multiple times. But it's like we'll read a rule. I'm trying to think. This just happened the other day, where you'll read a rule and it doesn't make sense in the fact of you're like, okay, you just said this, this, and this, but it does. But if you read it this way, and a lot of it's about
cleaning
maybe
up.
it's not off limits. Like
Okay.
most rules are copy and paste.
Correct.
So when people are like, hey, do you know the rules? I'm like, do you know how easy it is to go fish a tournament and never read the rules and never break one? Because 99% of them are, well, when you fish 45 tournaments a year, I've read every single rule ever, right? 1,000 times. So, dude, just
or
go
sat
out there.
through a meeting where they read them to you.
Right. Like all I need to know is if it's a trailer event, when is that's why they give you a card, right? They only tell you like stop and start times and when to be back at the weigh-in. Other than that,
well, you need to know A-rig, no A-rig.
Yeah, but most of our tournaments don't even have that rule in there.
There's some that have distance rules now, like, hey, you can't fish within 50 yards of another.
I don't even think most of us have that. So most of the rules are pretty cut and dry. So you have to go out of your way to, if you fish as many as we have, to like mess up a rule. Like we do this all the time. It's just normal fishing to us, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the rules that I have to pay attention to more are like the bigger trails and then the off limit stuff and things like that. And every once in a while they'll have the hardest rule there is like when they start talking about info, bartering, paying, what all that actually means, and then how they word it sometimes is wrong. Or it's not wrong, it's just like, hey, I'm reading this and we all kind of think it says this. And then so many times we have to get an interpretation from the director. And then a lot of times they realize after reading their own rule that they're like, oh yeah, now I see where that could be an issue. So most of the rules are off limits, because those are the rules that change most of the time, is like off limits, info rules, things like that. I still call on like Toyotas because and make sure, like, that's the one thing, like, can a guy get in my boat on a Monday? Like, I'm probably going to have, like, one of the guys that works with me from Strike King on my boat Monday before the event, and he's not in the tournament. And I'm 99% sure he can still do that because we don't have a practice days. Like, Bassmaster Opens have, or in the Toyota Championship, they have actual practice days. So it's different. We treat
like this year is straight up old school FLW tour. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday practice, off day Wednesday, tournament starts Thursday.
So those are the rules that we all really, really paid attention to and really like make sure we study them and know the dates and all that stuff.
So, so that's a good segue. So speaking of which, that is the main topic of today's show. So I'm glad you kind of talked about that because there was a, I call it an under the radar rule change with the Bassmasters Open, with the I hate it when people go Bassmasters Classic, which I know it used to be. It's Bassmaster Classic. There is no S. And then I just said Bassmasters Open and I gave myself the heebie-jeebies. You say Bassmaster Classic, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever said that. Yeah.
So a lot of old school guys call it the Bassmasters Classic because it was the Bassmasters Classic like through the 80s.
Yeah, I would never have even known that.
But there's like a couple guys that still say like, oh, I'm so pumped that I made the Bassmasters Classic, and you want to be like, chop that S off.
Yeah, I don't
know. That's one of my pet peeves. You want to know one of my other pet peeves? One of my other pet peeves is being rushed in the morning. So last night I plugged my phone in. I keep it next to my bed. I had an alarm. I'll tell you when I had my alarm set for. I'm an early riser, Todd. Very early riser. I had an alarm set for 5:10, 5:18, and 6:15 as like a backup, just in case something happened on those first two and I hit the snooze, right? We're live, by the way. You texted me. You said, is this live or recorded?
Well, no, I've set an alarm. I don't think my alarm has woken me up in like 10 years.
Okay, so my alarm wakes me up, and I 90% of the time am up at before my alarm goes off. But for some reason, I've had a little bit of inside. I just got a lot going on with the business wise and fishing stuff, like all good stuff, just juggling a lot of, that doesn't sound right. I've got a lot of balls in the air.
Just keep going on, Matt. Just keep going.
So I've been tired.
Yeah.
Anyway, I wake up and I like to get up. I get an hour to just kind of mosey around. I get my coffee in a BTL mug that will soon be available to the listeners should you want to represent BTL on the water at your daily commute.
Soft
and
plug.
Then as a pretty hard plug. And then I get everything ready. Anyway, my whole point is I like a leisurely morning, and I get up an hour early to give myself that time. I woke up at 8:02 and my phone was dead, and we go live at 8:30.
I was gonna say something that when I told you yesterday, I was like, hey man, I'm not used to doing something at 8 o'clock in the morning, like on a podcast. And so I could easily have forgotten about it. And then you were like, hey, I said, hey, give me a holler just to make sure.
Yeah.
I was gonna be driving back from dropping my kids off at school and stuff. And then it was like past 8, and I heard from you, and you did sound like you were sleeping. I'm like, see, one of those guys that sleeps till
No.
There's some guys that can, like, if they don't have anything to do, just sleep.
No, I'm not that. So especially like even on tournament morning, everyone's like, Andrew used to always give me crap because he's like, what time you getting up? And I'm always like 4 o'clock, even if takeoff is at 7, because I like to get up. I like to take my time. I like to get things going. I'm a believer that it takes a little bit of time to get things going. And then once your day starts, you're hitting the ground at 100%. Like I'm not like Andrew could just pop up, throw a little size small shirt on, run out to the truck, drive to the ramp, drop it in, take off, and be fishing 15 minutes later. I can't do that. Like I would be a total disaster.
Yeah, I can do that.
You can do that, or it couldn't?
Yeah, like, well, so my wife is so it's so, she's so early to everything, and everything's on schedule all the time, and and the only thing I told her, and I have to, and it's usually for like the sporting events, right? Especially for my daughter's soccer, we're always traveling and doing all this stuff. And I just want to be like, hey, you're kind of not setting her up for failure, but everything could go wrong in the morning with me, and it wouldn't like change how I, right? Because it like, I don't, she was like, you don't even know what it's like. And I'm like, let me tell you something. She was like, well, you don't know about traffic. And I'm like, do you realize that, like, and you'll know this from Eufaula. I was like, me and Matt and Andrew, like, we figured out this random boat ramp somewhere, and I don't know, like, I didn't even know where it was. I didn't even know where I was putting in. We get there with like 20 minutes before takeoff. I still have to run across the lake in the dark. It's this one little boat ramp thing in the middle of the woods. And I was like, I stressed over that zero. Like, I'm just driving there. We get there, put the boat in. We get there with like 7 minutes before takeoff. And I'm like, and I had to go get my coing there. I'm like, perfect. You know what I'm saying? Like, that was a normal, no big deal get there that I didn't stress. I didn't even think about stressing out over something like that.
See, I'm not that big on the stress. I like just the process of getting ready for it. So I'd be fine getting there if I'd be fine getting there 10 minutes before takeoff.
Okay.
But I'd have 2 hours beforehand, not where I'm stressing out or anything, just where I'm able. I think maybe because I do have a tendency to stress out. That's my time where I know that, like, hey, I'm not rushed. I can get everything ready. I can focus on the day. I mean, I'm not like doing meditation or anything. It's just, I like to lounge around a little, watch a little news, check the weather, make sure, get the show set up.
I'll sit in my bed and like just look at stuff on my phone. But yeah, I could care less. Like, I'm not, and I don't, I'm never the guy that gets to the boat, the water early. Never want to be like, I like to show up maybe 10 minutes before takeoff. And I've never been late. So
we're talking about rules, and you're talking about, rule changes.
Yes.
So the Bassmaster Opens, we'll do a little bit of history lesson here, have had a long and sordid road when it comes to rules as far as off limits, when you can practice before it. As the name suggests, it's the Bassmaster Opens, and for a number of years it was the Wild West, where you could receive, gather, purchase, barter, or trade information up until the first day of official, like there wasn't even an official practice up until the first day of official practice, which would be the Monday before the tournament starts on a Thursday. However, there was no off limits for practice or whatever. That was where like the legend of there were some guys that would practice for 30 to 40 days consecutively for a Bassmaster Open camp there. Like a lot of the Japanese anglers back in the day would literally like go from open to open, and that was back when there were 3 divisions, and they would just practice however many days there were in between.
That's one of the, so you asked me like the rules I really pay attention to, like that's the one, right? Is because I knew Monday, I think, right, we treated it more like a tournament day, which was you could go
information, Sunday, safe flight,
life jacket. Like Sunday, you can drive around doing wheelies out there and 360.
Practice with some men. Make sure that person that's in the boat with you is registered for the Open. That happened a couple times where the guy was like, "What do you mean you're on the freaking waiting list?" Well, I think I'm in. And they're not in.
Yeah. So that's the stuff I really paid attention to. But every other rule in the Opens was pretty much like
it was open. I call them the Wild West. I mean, it was the Opens. There was a lot of stuff going on.
I guess, yeah. But
not bad. All legal.
Well, it was like the Toyota. Well, see, I fished so many Toyotas and things like that. That's what the Toyotas are to this day. And I don't even think, but I'm going to bring something up later when you get to this. Yeah. But and why it's different? Because you said I'm reading how important is a level playing field. There is a difference with the Opens and Toyotas, and I'll explain here in a second.
Okay, so it was like that for a while, and then there was some change to where they were like, hey, I think a lot of people complained, like, I'm fishing against, someone like, I'm a normal human being. I'm fishing against someone who's fished 48 consecutive days on this place. So they went to a 5-day practice. So a Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and half a Wednesday. And I think when they did that, like, then that was when it went off limits. They might have gone to a 2-week off limits, no info at that point. So you could practice, and this is all just in the past 5 years. You could practice for 5 days, which placated the Chamber of Commerce's who want the 400 people to come in. And hey, they're going to come in on Friday. So you're going to get them Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Well, you're going to get them 8 days, right? So that's how much they're pumping into the economy and stuff like that.
Is it fair to say that we had, I wouldn't even say a small part in that we had a very large part in that rule?
Of making it a off limits to the water and just a 5-day practice. Yes, absolutely. I would say that is anglers going to bass saying, hey, there needs to be
like me, you, Andrew.
I don't know. I mean, I wasn't, probably you guys did. I know for sure. I don't think I contacted Bass about that personally.
Oh, we talked to Hank. I remember the podcast we did with Hank, and we're like, hey, why would you not do this? This solves so many problems. And there was an actual tournament that happened. I'm not going to get into that, but there was an actual tournament where there's stuff that happened before. If they'd have had that in there, that things wouldn't have happened prior to the start of that event, to where there were some things that were if you're asking me, 1,000% shady. It wasn't even shady. Like, I think it was against the law, but that wouldn't have been able to happen if there had been a true off limits, to where, okay, now you can't, because like I said, a lot of that off limits and or practice days, you have to a degree, follow the rules of the tournament. I'm going to give you want to know an example of that. Obviously the life jacket and stuff like that, but there are some questionable things about like getting off on the bank or getting off on the docks and doing some things that you can't do in a tournament and you can't do in practice, right? So like you kind of have to follow those rules.
Exactly I know what you're talking about.
Right. And it's like, it would be like frowned upon. It's one of those things that if you got caught, you might get in trouble, but if you don't get caught, there's rules and then there's laws you can break, right? Well, there's laws you can break that aren't in tournament rules. Like, because a tournament's like, why would we put that in there? Right? Well, it's hard to like put every single rule in there, even though it says don't break a law, but it's kind of one of those things. You might break a law and not get caught, and there's no way to like,
Mm-hmm.
you know what I'm saying? I know that's really vague, but I mean, I'm thinking about the actual instance, and they actually said, yeah, this would have negated that. So
then it went to a last year. This is all like recent changes. Like five years ago, it was the Wild West. So then last year it went to a 5-day practice period, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, half of Wednesday, with a 30-day off limits, meaning you could not be on the water. It was actually like a 28 to 30 day. They send a little deal that tells you, hey, this is where the off limits is. I've got a big board up there that I have marked like, hey, this is the off limits for this, as well as a 30-day no information rule. So that was one of the big things that Bass has listened to the anglers on, as far as off limits and a no information rule. It's the off limits as far as when you can or can't be on the water is tricky, because it is the Bassmaster Opens. There's a lot of people that are locals that want to be on it. And if you're a guide who makes your living on a body of water, what you're basically saying is, hey, I'm giving up X number of guide days for the potential to make that back in the Bassmaster Open. So there's a lot of guys that would fish it that choose not to because of the off limits on the water. Would you agree with that, Todd?
Right.
So this year, schedule comes out. It's the middle of November, and the way that the Bassmaster Opens works is you have to pay a deposit for your division. Went to Division 1, Division 2 this year. So you have to, it's a $2,000 entry fee per tournament. So in November, I'm fishing Division 2, which is Sam Rayburn, Kentucky Lake, Lake Norfolk, and Leech Lake. I paid what is that, $4,800, $1,200 for each tournament. And actually today I need to make it the deposit is due for the remainder. So I owe $800 for the each of the next tournaments. And at the time, you sign up and it's 30 days at 28 to 30 day off limits. They give you a time where it says, hey, this is where the off limits starts, where you cannot be on the water. After that, before that, you can gather information, talk to people, do whatever. Everyone goes about that differently. When you say that preparing for a Toyota and Open, anywhere where there is a period where you can gain information, that is a completely personal way that guys get ready for that level of tournament. Correct?
You're asking me about like,
yeah, I'm asking you like just a brief overview of when it comes to, you can do whatever you want on that lake as far as gathering information. I mean, it goes from, I want absolutely 0 to how many waypoints can you fit on a chip and send me, and everywhere in between that. For the average guy getting ready for a Toyota or for a Bassmaster Open.
Okay, well, since you bring it up, I was going to bring it up later. But here's the thing, the difference between Toyotas and Opens is, and I did look in this comment. I don't know why I didn't have comments turned on, and some guy was like, so you don't read the rules so you can live in the gray? I don't read. Do you understand how easy it is to go fishing and not break a rule? Like, if you just went out there and went fishing like 99%, like, it's pretty normal to go out there and go, I just went fishing like I've done for 25 years.
I mean, sometimes that they have a no net rule. Sometimes the off limits are a little bit funky. I think that's what they're saying. But yes, common sense stuff.
No, he's not. No, they're trying to like read into that. And I'm like, no, dude, just go throw a bait in the water and catch fish. This is not difficult.
Let's stay on track here, so we can follow this thought all the way through.
Well, I'm staying on track because it still matters with what we're talking about. But because they're like, well, those, like, I don't have to read a rule about that stuff. I've read them for 20-something years.
I agree.
It's the same rule. Use one rod.
No trolling, no live bait.
Yeah, like, I don't have to read that for the 50th time, right? So the difference between Toyotas and Opens is this. It's been like this forever, okay? Toyotas, you can always get in. You can almost always get, like, I've never not gotten in a Toyota in my entire life, right? Mm-hmm. It's probably going to be a little bit harder now because of coiners. They're having a lot harder time getting coiners, but for the most part, you can get in any Toyota. I've never seen them I've never seen it capped out to a degree. I think they've had at one time, I think at Okeechobee, they had an enormous
300 some.
Yeah. So Bassmaster Opens were always a thing that you had to get. They capped it off at, now it's 230.
It's 230. Yeah, you used to have to have a co-angler link to get in. Now you don't have to have a co-angler link. You automatically go on a waiting list. Then they're like, it's almost like you like won a lottery to go kill an elk or something. It's like, congratulations, you've gotten in. You've gotten in.
Well, and the thing that's crazy is that, so I remember getting in the opens the first year, like we'd be at our phone. Like I had 3 people
trying to call to get through.
At like 8 o'clock in the morning on November 3rd or whatever it used to be, right? So it was a hard thing to get in the opens. Now, why is that important? Toyotas. So this is a great example. We have a Toyota starting, I don't know, 10 days from now, right? And then y'all start where on the 13th of February on Rayburn, something like that. 15th, 13th.
Yeah, the 13th is the first day. The first day of practice is the 9th.
Okay, so yeah, I'm close. The crazy thing, so we've got 2 tournaments back to back. One's a Toyota, one's an Open, 2 weeks apart. And someone called me and they were like, well, who's getting in the Toyota and who's getting the Open? Well, I know a couple guys that are in the Opens, and I'm talking about locals or whatever, like guys that fish Rayburn, that live down here. I don't know of everyone else because I don't go talk to all those guys, but I would assume most of the locals down here are going to fish the Toyotas, not the Opens.
Yeah, because they can continue to fish Rayburn and they don't have to do the 30-day off limits, and they can just fish go on with their regular life. Plus, it's less expensive, and the first place payout is actually bigger.
Right, and the next Toyota on Rayburn, and like I said, these are locals, is in the same conflict as another Open.
Yeah.
Right. And so,
that Toyota schedule was like Rayburn. You follow it, right?
Yeah, I think it was like that
great schedule, but if you fish the Opens, you can't fish.
And then the championships on Grand. So, anyways, but stay on track. So, all those guys, like
we're already off track.
Yeah, we're already off track
because we got to circle back to this.
No, I'm still on it.
Okay.
So the Toyotas have way more locals, and I would argue, and I think we might be wrong, but all of us locals would agree that we would be more scared of locals in the Toyota than in the Open, right? There's going to be more guys that consistently catch them in team tournaments,
because there's more guys that are on fish that go into that tournament on fish, whereas with 30 days off limits and it's just, dude, we got like every tournament down here is taking 30 something pounds to win because it's Rayburn and these guys can catch there's
them.
Tons more locals in a Toyota than there is in the Opens. That's your point. I see what you're saying. Tons more, like 80% locals in a Toyota or within a 3-hour radius.
So you're like, well, what about info? Well, all those guys who are going to fish that Toyota, I could care less about info. The guys with the best info, I'm already fishing against.
Yep.
And it's not info that they obtained from somebody. It's information they obtained from themselves, like from fishing. Like they're the ones that would give out the good info, but we're already fishing against each other. And they've already put in the work. They've done their time. So I can say the word respect. I respect those guys, and those guys are going to go out there and do it. What I don't like is, or what I've never liked is, then you got Open guys, right, that put in none of that time and effort, calling up those other guys, asking for information like that. And then they go down there with a massive advantage and all this stuff. And they do it almost everywhere they go. And then you're going to fish against them guys. To me, it's totally fair fishing against guys that are on the lake for 30 days and we all can be there. And it's all whoever puts in the work down here. Like we're okay with that. I just don't like the guy coming down there that put in zero work. And then, he catches them and thinks he did something, and all he did was get a bunch of info. But those guys from Rayburn, right? Those guys that are really good in the Toyotas, they can't call anyone. You want to know why? Anyone that they would call is
they're fishing against. That's got any info worth a dang. Okay, so we circle back. So this is the crux of the show. We're 30 minutes in and we've gotten here. So to recap, changing rules as far as off limits in practice for the Bassmaster Opens. Understandable. Actually appreciate a lot of the changes. It's a result of Bassmaster, specifically Hank Weldon, I think going to Bass and saying, hey, this is what the anglers want. This makes sense. This helps them. This does that. Yeah, we'll go to a 30-day off limits. Yeah, we'll limit practice to 5 days. So we start saying, well, why 5 days? So now you're seeing with the forward-facing technology this year coming out with the one transducer, the number of inches on the graph, the inches off of the deck, the whole 9 yards. They're paralleling the Bassmaster Elite Series, right? So they changed the practice period from 4.5 days to 3 days with an off day. The off day is split. Some guys love it. Like I'm rooming with Matt Steffen this year, and he's like, I get my glorious off day back. And I'm like, why the hell don't we just do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday and start on Thursday? I'm like, I don't want an off day. I'm going to be sitting there, just like twitching. Like, what are we doing? What are we doing? What are we doing? What are we doing? What are we doing?
I like off days.
Anyway. And so they kept the 28 to 30 day off limits where you can't be on the water, and the no information rule, meaning you can't get any information from that 30 days from each tournament. So you have marked on the calendar, hey, this is where the off limits is. If I'm just having a conversation with you and you say something about, hey, I'm in off limits, it just reminds you not to do that. So I've got it all marked for all 4 of the tournaments. This is where things get spicy, Todd. So one of the other things that Bass has done that I really like is there is a Bassmaster Open weekly update. It's where they send out and they say, hey, here's what's coming up. Here's where it went down. Here's how many people watched it on FS2. Here's what happened. There were 3 anglers that, took a polygraph and passed. This is anything that goes on. I like it. It's constant communication through a year, because you have to remember, if you're in this, you're investing just with Bassmaster $10,000 to $15,000. And you're $25,000 to $30,000 in to fish a division of this stuff, especially in the past when it was like 9 tournaments. So I like the communication. I think that's a great addition. Did you fish them since when you haven't fished them since you started the weekly updates? Have you, Todd? It's like fireside chat with FDR.
No, are they messages?
It's just an email.
Oh,
it's like, I don't know if I'm allowed to read that. It just says, dear anglers, good afternoon and happy Friday. Here's what's going on in the tournament.
No, I did that.
So everything was fine. We've paid I'm $4,800 in. Everyone's $4,800 in. Tournament starts in a couple weeks we're at Clark's Hill. They've been in off limits for a week or two. Rayburn just went off limits. Kentucky everything's fine and happy. So we get this email on Friday, January 10th. If it wasn't for this email, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now, because this is where things, I'll say, reading this email left a sour taste in my mouth. I was pretty fired up when I called you, wasn't I?
And this is why I like you want to know why I didn't really ever pay attention to, not rules, but like pay attention to these things. I didn't have to read an email. I knew there were guys out there like y'all that would call and text me within minutes of an email coming out. And I'm like, wait, what's going on?
Well, the reason why I called you was, contrary to popular belief, you're actually pretty smart when it comes to thinking of things outside the box.
You're going to blow up the comment section on this, man. They're going to freaking roast
No,
you.
I'm just saying, if there's something in the industry that happens that doesn't make sense to me and doesn't make sense to, my like-minded friends or people that also fish, like, you're a great sounding board to say, okay, what are your thoughts on this? And I go, oh, I never thought about it from that aspect. Yeah. And then it might make sense. Cause I was really hot on this topic, but that's kind of what led to this show. So we digress back to this. I mean, we're like on a train, but every once in a while the track like has to go around a mountain instead of through the mountain.
That's what's fun.
But we're getting there.
Okay.
The email continues. This is on Friday the 10th. There are 2 key subjects which we received frequent questions about, which we'd like to address. And number 2 is tournament rules - information gathering. I want to direct your attention to Rule 3, Section 4, which states, once these rules are published on Bassmaster.com, no competitor may purchase, solicit, or barter for any information on locating, catching fish in the Bassmaster Opens tournament waters, whether through GPS waypointing, hiring guides, or other means. That is a great addition with the purchase or barter. However, there's also a word in there, solicit, which is ask. That would be like, Todd, will you get me a glass of water? I'm soliciting a glass of water from you, correct? That's asking.
Yeah, I mean,
that's asking. That's anything. You go into you say, hey man, what part of the lake they biting in?
Do you know why they have all those words in there?
Yes, I know why they have purchase and barter.
No, all of them. Like anything. Like when I hear
let me finish this, Todd. You have to let me finish this thought, because this is where it makes sense. No competitor may purchase, solicit, or barter any information on locating or catching fish in the Bassmaster Open tournament waters, whether through GPS waypointing, hiring of guides, or other means. During the off-limits period, practice, and competition, anglers cannot solicit, gather, or intentionally receive any information from anyone than other competitors in the respective Bassmaster Opens they are competing in. However, purchasing or bartering of fishing locations or information from another competitor is not allowed and will result in disqualification. This goes back to a couple years ago when allegedly there were several anglers that are no longer in the Bassmaster Opens who, for lack of a better term, bought their way onto the Elite Series. That was the general consensus, whether it was accurate or not. I don't have proof on anything. But that was where that section of the rule came from, the bartering or purchasing of information, where someone comes in and it's literally a cash exchange of waypoints for money.
Yep, all the stuff that went on.
Additionally, sharing tournament winnings with competitors or non-competitors in exchange for such information is also prohibited. That has also gone on in the past, where it's, hey, I will ensure that you give me the juice because I'm going to give you a cut of the cow should I win. So that means this guy just paid me and I just gave him crap. Well, now you're on the hook too, because if the guy that you're taking money from, you give him the juice, now he wins $100,000. Now you get 10%, 20% of it or whatever. That used to be a big FLW thing from what I heard, like back in the day. Fair assessment, all allegedly too, but this is like when guys sit around a fire, drink a beer or sparkling water and talk about it. That's kind of the stuff that comes up.
Are you gonna have a thing at the end of the show where I can sign up for these tournaments so I can progress my career? This is like something I can't wait to go do, but keep going.
This rule is designed to prevent any unfair advantage in the Bassmaster Open tournaments. It does not prohibit recreational fishing or participation in other tournaments as long as it falls in the outside the off limits period. However, you can, and this is bold, you cannot solicit, gather, or intentionally receive information for competitive gain related to a Bassmaster tournament unless that information comes from another competitor in the same tournament. This is bold. Let me reread that. You cannot solicit, gather, or intentionally receive information from for a competitive gain related to a Bassmaster Opens tournament. So what they're saying is, in layman's terms here, is now there is no information gathering as of January 10th for the remainder of the entire Bassmaster Open season. So no information about any of the other tournaments on the schedule, even though from the sign-up date, which was November 15th or November 30th, through this email, there was a 30-day off-limits period. So on January 9th, if I had called you up, Todd, and said, Todd, send me your chip for Rayburn, you could have put it in the mail and sent it to me. 100% totally legal. Once this email came to us and I did that and said, Todd, send me your chip for Rayburn, I am now DQ'd. You follow?
Yeah.
That's as simple as it gets. Now let me finish reading this and then we'll get to it. We understand that this represents a transition from the previous rule. So they're saying we're changing the rule. We know we're changing, this isn't the rule you signed up on. We're changing this rule. This written clarification is effective immediately upon receipt of this email. The key issue is the intent behind your actions. We have to get into this because they literally, I think I used this term with another competitor who's fishing them all, who are renamed nameless. They had a can of worms and they said, you know what? I don't think this can is big enough. Let's open up a whole worm farm. So that's what they did with this next sentence. The key issue is intent behind your actions. If you are fishing with a friend on tournament waters for fun fishing, that's fine. But if the trip's purpose is to gain knowledge for the Bassmaster Open by soliciting, purchasing, or bartering for information, and the other person is not a competitor, that could result in a violation of this rule. Please read the rules carefully to ensure you understand the intent and restrictions.
Okay.
There's a lot to unpack in that topic.
Okay. First, I want to say, because Clay Williamson said, I wish there was a book that had all the incidences that led to these rules. That's such a great thing he said right there. Because when I asked you, do you know why all those words are in that rule?
Yes, because something happened to add each word in there.
Yes. To me, and so you sometimes think I go off the rails and like, hey, you're getting off track on these rules, and why you don't necessarily, when I say I don't read them, if they have it, they could have this rule could be in there. No info, January 15th. I don't need anything else. I don't need the barter. I've done enough fishing to know that January 15th, I'm not allowed to get any kind of information from anywhere about.
That's the way it was. Now they changed it.
I know. So I don't have to go read rules like everyone's like, did you read? No, no info after January 15th.
Listen,
fine. And I just go on about my day.
There's a disclaimer here. All opinions based on rules reading are Todd Castledine's opinions and beliefs only, and not necessarily those recommended from Matt Pangrak at Bass Talk Live.
Yeah.
This said, I would highly recommend that as you sign up for a tournament organization, you print the rules out, you highlight them, and you read all the rules, and then contact your tournament director should you have any questions. That's the way I would do it, but I'm not you.
Totally. The one thing I would say is I don't do any of that, except if I question a rule that doesn't make sense, I will call the tournament director and ask him specifically. I've done this 1,000 times. I'm going to call Mark McWaugh and ask him Monday, can a guy from Strike King, I'm going to do it. I do it every year. Make sure he can get in my boat Monday. I'm going to. I don't care what the rule says. I'm going to ask the tournament director. But all these things, like, it's not that hard, right? I'm like, no info, fine. I've done this 1,000 times. Not a big deal. Then and that's what I just assumed, that y'all had the 30-day before. I never got any of these rules because I'm not fishing them, so I didn't.
That isn't what is assumed. That's what it was. So November through January 10th, there was a 30-day off limits for, you could not be on the water that 28 to 30 days based on that date. But prior to that, you could receive information. I could call you up and ask for information.
But I didn't read those rules. So I'm just stating that in years past, because I'm not fishing the Opens, I'm not going to go read the rules for the Opens. I care less. But if I knew you had an off limits, right? Because I have buddies fishing this thing.
Yep. And
one of them, like, we all do it. Like January 15th, if I'm on the phone, like, because I talk to people, like,
hey, don't say anything about Rayburn. It went off limits today.
I already know what that means.
Open up conversations.
Yeah. So like, I'm fishing this weekend, and I might be like, I could give them like my results, of course, because that's public. But other than that, I would not talk about my day, and they wouldn't ask. And this has been going on for years. This is how we all do everything. So this is pretty simple.
Okay. Get to the point. Get to the crux of this. Why this is a major issue, Todd.
So from my understanding, because I still want to make sure this is correct. So
trust me, what you're about to say is correct, because I too was incredulous and had disbelief on this rule change.
Well, there's a couple things. First, I want to explain this to everyone. I don't know where to start, but if the 15th, before the 15th, I could get any info I wanted from anybody about anything. Correct. Wild West, right?
Correct.
Send me all the waypoints. Send me all
there might have been something about purchase or barter in there for this year, because that was huge for us. But yes, I could call you up within 30 days of that off limits. I could get any info on any Bassmaster Open tournament except that I'm fishing in Division 2, as long as it's within that 28 to 30 days.
I apologize about I don't think about the actual money side of it.
Yes.
Because I've never had any of my buddies.
But yes, prior to this email coming out, that's what we signed up for. We paid our deposit, and that's what it was. It was until that there was this rule change.
Like, I can't believe people actually do that. Is like,
I know we're almost to the meat of this thing. 46 minutes in.
The one thing that and I want to get to this after the 15th. When was the time that the fishing with a buddy thing? I want to get into that. That's always been a little bit of a gray area in. There's no gray. This is the dumbest.
Okay.
This could be possibly the dumbest rule I've ever seen in info.
Yes. Okay. So here's the deal. This was not an issue. This was not an issue because the rules had stated that you could get information before the 30 days. So you could fish with anybody. You could fish with anybody. But now with the rule change, they're still saying you could still fish with people on that body of water before 30 days. You just can't gain any advantage with the intent of fishing for the Opens. So I posed this question.
Every minute you spend on the water, you're learning something. Every minute. And if you go with someone, you're learning something. You're gaining an advantage.
So like I said, that's where you're doing a worm thing. That is not my issue. That's a super gray area. And Bassmaster wants to deal with that.
That's not gray. That should never be in there. But that's what really gets to me, because they're like, if you're not trying to gain an advantage, I'm just going to go out. Because when you tell me that, people have to listen to this. This is why rules are put in place, because of stupid stuff like this. You can say, oh, I'm not allowed to ask or talk about anything about Rayburn, but you can get in the boat with me. Well, this is what's going to happen. And we cannot do this, right? Because this is obvious. Any of these guys are going to do this. Hey, Todd, I want to get in the boat with me. We can't talk about Rayburn. Okay. Well, what's going to happen, and this is pretty obvious, they're going to drive around the lake, and you just drive around to this brush pile, this spot.
The written clarification is effective immediately upon receipt. The key issue is intent behind your actions. If you're fishing with a friend on tournament waters for fun, that's fine. But if the trip's purpose is to gain knowledge for the Bassmaster Open, i.e. by soliciting, purchasing, or bartering information, and the other person is not a competitor, this could result in a violation. So here's the question that I posed. Let's say hypothetically, I go on a spring fishing trip every March to Kentucky Lake with my buddy who's not in the Open, but he's incredibly good out there. And I had that trip planned, and it was before the 30-day off limits, before Bassmaster changed the rule and said, hey, you can't get any info now. And I go ahead and go with my buddy, and jump in my buddy's boat, and he takes me to the holy land of giant smallmouth. But I did not say, take me to the holy land of giant smallmouth. And it's very easy to say where it is, and we freaking smash him. And then I go back 32 days later in the Bassmaster Open, I drive right to that spot, and I catch 25 pounds, and I win the Bassmaster Open on that tournament off the spot that my buddy showed me more than 30 days before. But I did not pay, barter, or solicit that. That's legal.
Yeah, that's stupid. That's the dumbest thing ever.
Thank you.
That's the dumbest thing ever.
It's very clear that rule is ill thought out and a result. Okay, I'm not going to say very clear. I have to be careful of how I word this, because this is my opinion, and I don't want to insult those that are making the rules, but I do want to point out holes and inconsistencies in those decisions. You see what I'm saying? I don't just want to say, screw that, that's the dumbest thing ever. I want to show why it's not good for the sport, it's unfair, and it's ill thought out.
If you did all that, and then 100 guys sat there and found out that's what happened and you won, do you think any one of those 100 guys would sit there and go, oh, he didn't do that? He didn't mean to go do all that. That just accidentally happened where he got lucky with
No,
a
it's
buddy.
absolutely brutal. And that is
Yeah.
a snap reaction to this rule change that went from 30 days of no information to the entire rest of the year, to where that creates bigger problems,
Okay.
right? You have
So
a
then-
problem that I don't even think it was a problem at all. That was the other thing. But that's just a side thing. This isn't even the meat of the issue.
This isn't
Todd.
even the meat.
We
The
haven't
meat is
even
this.
gotten to the meat of the issue.
I'll tell you the meat. Here's the meat of it. Is from the you asked me one time or earlier in the conversation, Todd, has anything ever changed during the tournament? When I sign up for a tournament, I know the places I'm going, I know when I'm going there, and here are the rules, and then I decide whether or not I want to do that. Right? If this looks like if I agree to this, I'm now paying my money and I'm signing off on that. And in doing so, right? Like I pay my money, everything's good to go. And then
Correct.
And then all of a sudden, I'm allowed to do, or not all of a sudden, but I'm allowed to get info for all these other lakes at any point in time. And I'm like, cool. Whether you get it or not, it doesn't really matter. And you might be like, hey, I'm going to Kentucky Lake 6 months from now. I got a buddy that lives down there. I might call him up 35 days before the event and be like, hey man, is there anything I need to know? Whatever.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you think on January the 3rd. Now the problem is we don't live in that world of like, we live in a different world where guys are out there trying to scheme and do everything they possibly can. And there's a lot of guys that probably went out there January, whenever it came out.
November 15th, as soon as you signed
November
up and the
15th.
Schedule came out.
Dude, their phone, if they had a phone bill, they were on it all day long, right?
Yep.
And they were calling everyone they knew.
For
And
all
if
four
nothing-
tournaments, whether it was Rayburn in 2 months or Leach in 9 months.
And they did all that. And then all of a sudden, those guys, right, did all that. And you're like, well, it was legal. Well, yeah. And then and it was legal. And we have no problem with that. Like if
Zero issue.
Right. But I also knew that I didn't have to do that on November 15th because the rules said I didn't have to.
Correct.
And then all of a sudden now you change it. And so you got guys that got all that stuff. And now you got a whole bunch of guys that didn't. And that's not what you signed up for. That's the whole thing when we do all this, is that we just want things to be, it's not that it's not fair, but imagine this.
It's totally unfair. It is
Well,
not
totally-
fair. They
Yeah.
created an unfair playing field with this rule change.
Everyone's going to be like, well, it's info. We'll just change info to something different. And here's what it would be. Imagine that you're a guy.
No, we're not getting to solutions yet. We're still, are you
No,
giving a
I'm
solution
not.
to this? Don't give
No,
the
I'm-
solutions yet.
I'm getting
'Cause you
an
can't,
example.
my big thing on BTL is we have to end this show with solutions. I also have an on the water thing at 11, so we have to be done by we have 40 minutes left.
Guys are going to be like, hey, they're going to talk about info and that whatever. I'm just going to say, what if it had been this? What if they had said you can't be on the water, or say you could have like practiced or whatever, right? And they had a different 30-day off limits or whatever, and you went in there going, hey, we're gonna let you fish for 30 days before the event, and like you knew that, right?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, so like, okay, well, I'm going to take off a week before the event to practice. And you did that with your job or whatever you did. And so you're about, like everyone else has been out there practicing for a month. And then all of a sudden, a week before, they're like, hey, by the way, we're going to change this now for the rest of the year that you can't do this. And you're like, dude, I already took off vacation time. I haven't been practicing because I already
and half the people had practiced and you hadn't been able to, and they changed the rules after you paid.
It's the same thing.
It's exactly the same thing. Here's the crux of the matter. It is not about it. It is not about information. It is not about getting information. It is not about missing out on information. It is not about who got what, when, where, or why. This is about a consistency in the rules at the second highest level of competition with a company that we are doing business with, that the only thing we ask for as sole proprietors is to have a fair and level playing field when we launch the boat on day one of the tournament. That is not a difficult ask. You have 101 Elite Series anglers and you have over 300 open anglers, and it would be 400-0 if you were to ask, do you have an issue with a fair and balanced system where everybody starts with a level playing field? What this does, it is no longer a level playing field, Todd. You have anglers who from November 15th through January 10th received information. Maybe general information, maybe waypoints, maybe they received information.
They did the same thing in the elites, by the way.
I know they did the same thing. I'm getting to that point. Now, it is an unfair playing field because what they are saying, and I've clarified this with Bass, is, hey, if you received information during that time, you're good to go. You can keep doing it. However, now if you do that, you will get DQ'd. Even though when you signed up for the rules, you knew you had 30 days before each one. This is not fair. It is not balanced. I will be competing against anglers. I've received zero information, which is my own. I was going to call about a couple of the different fisheries. I've got some buddies that are on Kentucky Lake. I was going to make a call about Norfolk. It wasn't that big a deal to me. I've received zero information for any of the 4 events, right? I will now be competing against anglers. It should be completely level. Like it should be the 30 days. If I want to, however deep I want to dive into it, I can or I can't. I will now be competing against anglers who are fishing waypoints that they received when it was legal, even though it's not legal, even though I've paid the entry fee. And the only thing that I ask for, the only thing that gives me confidence is when Ray Scott started this thing on Beaver Lake, and I've got it right there. The Bass Boss, the inspirational story of Ray Scott and the sport fishing history he created. Why did people show up to that? Why did all of the top sportsmen and fishermen showed up? Because it was the first tournament, Troy, where you didn't think you were fishing against someone who was weighing in a frozen fish. It was fair. It was balanced. Everyone played by the same rules. It was the same entry fees. It was a level playing field. This is not a level playing field. They changed it in an email and said, learn to love it. I've confirmed this with Bassmaster. That's a major problem in tournament fishing, Todd. Every single one of the open anglers is livid. I have not talked to anyone who is not livid about this, except those that are so over it already that they chuckle and say, would you expect anything different?
No, I don't expect anything different. And so you want the solution? The solution's easy. They won't do it. So do you want me to give it or not?
Yes.
All this could have been avoided because I don't know who's making these rules. And I'm sorry if I offend someone up there at Bass that thinks they know something. This isn't rocket science. Like we haven't spent days looking these rules over and contemplating these rules. Like you told me what happened, I instantly was like, well, that's stupid. So if most of us can easily go, that was dumb within 10 seconds of hearing the rule, how in the world did that get passed throughout the organization from the get-go? Just like the gray area of the not getting an advantage, riding around with your buddy, but you can't get info. Like none of this, it's like the solution is to get someone up there or consult with some people. And I'm not saying Bassmaster Open guys, because I think that's a horrible idea. Because if the problem with getting guys that are actually in the tournament, most guys will always do whatever is best for them. Right. And so that's not how you go about it. But just ask someone that within the industry, like, hey, what do you see with this? Man, I don't think that's a good idea because this could possibly happen. Yeah, we probably want to avoid this. But that's the problem. They won't do that. I don't understand. Like, are they so prideful that they don't want to reach out and ask some people?
I don't know. Frank, I sent him a link to the show. So Frank said, if you want to be a pro fisherman, then do the work on your own. Then it's your trophy. That the issue isn't the information. The issue is a mid-season or preseason rule change has created an uneven playing field. If they had said get information all the way up until the first cast, if they said you got to guide your boat, if they had said at the very beginning of the year, zero information. The point is consistency and changing a rule that makes the field uneven. An uneven playing field. And anybody, Todd, you fish at a very high level. How important are micro advantages in this thing? Well, it can be the difference between making a classic or not, making the Elite Series or not, cashing a check or not. Here, Frank is the one who said this. You know Frank, right?
Yeah.
We'll bring Frank in on this. What's up, Frank?
Hot topic today, boys.
Have you been listening to this?
Every minute of it.
What are your thoughts? And sorry, I had someone that texted me that said let Todd talk. It might be the first show in history where someone's telling me to shut up.
What are you talking about? Everyone thinks that I talk too much.
I know. That's what I was saying.
Podcast. I guess I'm just supposed to sit here and stare at you, man.
No. I'm just trying to keep you on. Like, that's why I brought you on, but I wanted to kind of stay on topic and point toward this. Do you understand what we're talking about, Frank? What are your thoughts on this?
100%. Todd, I agree with you on this issue. Here's the deal. Okay. The information rule, the off limits rule, it's been going back and forth from day one when I fished it. But when I first started fishing the Opens, there was no off limits. And so we could literally go down, like you said earlier, you could go down a month if you wanted to. Didn't matter. I actually like the no off limits because I would go 6 days before the tournament, fish for 5, take a day off. And my thought process was, if I can't find enough fish to be competitive in 5 days, I got no business fishing against it.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't care. The minute they made the off limits and shortened the practice days up, now what you're doing is you're opening the door for cheaters to win. And I don't mind losing if you beat me fair and square. But if you cheat to beat me, that pisses me off. I have issues with that. The rule changes at the last minute. That's another piece of problem, because that affects half the field. The people that were not privy to the rule change, that beforehand, they get the info, they get what they want to get, the rule changes, and so the guys that actually follow the rules now get penalized for following the rules.
And the guys who did it before were still following the rules. They just all of a sudden gained a random unfair competitive advantage.
Right, but let me be the. I'm going to make a lot of people mad right now. If you want to be a professional bass angler and you want to be the best of the best, right? You should be able to do it on your own. And so you should put more work in it. If you're struggling, then you need to put more work into the game. Not necessarily try to barter information or garnish information. I mean, realistically, as an angler, the only thing you need to know really is, if you're talking Great Lakes, how deep are the fish? That's the only thing you need to know there. If you're talking inland lakes, how far are they in their seasonal pattern? Very vague information, but
that's
easy
the whole
to
point.
know.
But that's I agree, Frank. But I can't do that now. Whereas there's a whole no one can do that now in the Opens where they could before. I'll give a perfect example. We went to Lake Norman. You listen to day 4 with Frank Scalish, Lake Norman. You love that lake. There's a 30-day off limits for that. I called you up. We talked for 10, 15 minutes. You gave me 0 waypoints.
None.
You gave me, and I liked it because I knew that what you did was you gave me an area and said, go figure it out. And It was a 10-minute phone call, and I had an area, and I got there and I went, my God, this is huge. But it put me in an area, and I went on. I was in the top 10 after day 1, and I had a great tournament, and I caught him away that you wouldn't have ever been fishing, but it was in that same general area. That's what I'm saying now. That's a competitive advantage that now part of that field has that I don't. It's not a waypoint. It's not an information issue. It's a level playing field issue. That's what this fight is about.
Gotcha. So now here comes the other part of the equation. Okay. So we're all fishermen, and 99% of our friends are all fishermen. And when we all get in a room together, what do we talk about? We talk fishing.
I didn't even know Todd had kids until like a year ago.
No, I see. If you watch Todd's posts and his videos, you know he has children.
I know.
But so all we do is talk about fishing. It's like no other. It's like every other professional sport. Football players talk about football, et cetera, all the way down the line. So how do you sit there and go, you could fish with a friend as long as you're not going to get information?
Todd,
what? Well, I mean, dude, Todd, if you and I went fishing together, even if we didn't, better yet, you and I are going to go fishing together on a lake neither one of us has ever been on. I'm going to get information from you during that day, and you're going to get information from me
all
during
day.
that.
And we
100%.
never say a word. And we
Not-
never say a word to each other.
Not one word. That's why I agree with you 100%. This is ridiculous already in the professional sport of bass fishing. This is ludicrous.
Because even Frank, when you first started, you started talking about seasonal patterns, and these are things like this. So if I just show up to you on the lake and you just start driving somewhere, you're driving there for a reason, and it's for the 40 years you've been fishing.
100%.
Even if you've never been on the lake, this is where you're going to start, just like I would do. And you'd be like, I wonder why he's going here. Like, he must have something on his mind. All that stuff is so, like I said, the only way to make that possible is if me and you went out and set up there in the middle of the lake. That's the only way we would never get and just
right. And turn no locators on.
Right.
Well, that said, yeah, now if you go sit in the middle of the lake, I mean, you guys will both bust a 25-pound bag.
No, we just can't go. We just can't put the tow motor down. As long as we don't put the tow motor down, we're good.
Right, you're good. But yeah, I mean, I just think this whole thing is ludicrous. I mean, I just was always under the mindset of, give me 5 days on a lake and then get whatever information you want. I'll be competitive. I may not win, but I'll be competitive.
Okay, Todd, answer me this. And like I said, I got about 20 minutes. I'm headed to the lake. I got the new rig. You can log back in at between 11 and 11:30. I'll be live with Scott Palmer. I'll be dialing in my unit just like he would if we weren't live. I just said, screw it. Let's go live Bill O'Reilly style on it. Let me ask you this. Why do you think this rule was changed? I did not hear any complaining before it in my circles. No one knew about it. We signed up for it under the 30 days. It went 3 months under the 30 days. There was no scuttlebutt like that. This was a bad rule. Yes, last year we fished under it, the same rule. It was the most well-ran, I thought, fair and equitable series we had ever had in the years that I had fished Toyotas and Opens. It was unbelievable. There was not a single issue that I was aware of. And then out of nowhere, this rule changes, which we just established, opens up a massive can of worms with the fishing with and creates an unequal playing field immediately. Why do you think this rule was changed?
Easily. So, and it all comes down to what me and Frank were talking about. That stupid thing that info thing about whether or not how you get information and asking the questions. For me, like once you put info in a date, I automatically know that it's a black and white line. Like, okay, this is the date. I don't really care how you get it. It's done. And I just move on. I don't have to read the rest of the rule. It's like no info. I'm not going to sit there and try to define every single word. And that's why I said there's a lot of words in there, because everyone's trying to define the words, right? Well, what does that word actually mean? And does it mean the same thing to me as it does to you? No, oh my gosh, right? Like, move on.
Right.
Go get info. There were guys that read that rule and then found out about the asking part. That Matt, you could call me up. And if I knew this already, right? So say I'm a guy and Matt's like, hey, Todd, you can tell me anything. I just can't ask you. So now another open guy calls me up. He's like, hey, Todd, never ask a word. And I go give him 15,000 waypoints, but he never asked. That was legal. Well, those guys found out about that and go, wait, what? That doesn't make any sense. And so now guys were like, well, hold on just a second. And they started calling and going, well, people thought they were going to be DQ'd. And then all of a sudden they were like, it was this weird timeline in there that they thought that they had done something wrong. And so from there, they realized that the rule, that how they had worded it or whatever, was bad. And then they had a bunch of people not worried that they thought they were breaking another rule. And
but
so
they reported themselves to say, hey, did this. So then why did
it all together without, this was my problem, without ever actually like thinking about what they were doing. They're like, well, let's solve this problem, right? Real quick. We'll just solve this problem and do all this. They didn't think about the consequences, and they never do. They never think like the flip side of any of their decisions. They just like, let's solve a problem real quick and and then they created a whole bunch more problems.
Frank, would it upset you if you were entering a tournament knowing that not everybody you competed against in that tournament was on a level and fair playing field?
Yeah, but it never is. It never is.
I know, but now you're talking hypothetical. Talk concrete things. Based on the rules, it's created the unfair. It never is anyway, but that's because we know we're playing with outliers.
Well, but here, look, I'm gonna say this, man. I'm gonna probably get.
I know what Frank's gonna say.
I'm gonna get burned, but I'm gonna go down a small rabbit hole. We were going to Florida, and I picked up a boat on the way down, and I had to break it in. And so I called the tournament director, and I said, "Hey, what part of this chain is off limits? Because I need to break a boat in." I literally pulled off the freeway and pulled my map out because I needed a lake that I could access, that I could break the boat in before the event. And it couldn't be tournament water. So I asked him about this small little nothing little puddle. And he said, "Oh no, that's on limits. That's connected to the lake. You can't put your boat in there." So we established that I was going to leave the chain and go to a different lake. I told him what lake. He said, "You're good." I went down, broke the boat in. In my brain, I'm like, I got to go to that small little nothing looking puddle and go explore. If that's on limits, there's got to be a way in there.
Mm-hmm.
And so I found a way in there, and I absolutely was on the absolute mother load of all could be. I fished the entire freaking chain. I couldn't hardly catch a bass, but this place was a tournament win bar none. In the meeting, he said, "Hey, by the way, this particular puddle is off limits now." I spent my whole practice time in there figuring out how to catch every single bass in there I could catch. And I went apeshit after the meeting, and I went to the tournament director, and we were nose to nose on this because I said, 3 days ago, you told me, or 4 days ago, you told me that was on limits. I could not go in there to break my boat in. And I went in there and practiced for the event during the practice time. And now in the meeting, you're telling me that I can't fish there? And here, I'll tell you what, I was catching between 15 and 19 pounds a day in there easily. And the tournament was one of the worst Florida tournaments we ever had. And it took like 10 pounds a day to win. And I caught, I think, 2 bass. One of them was 1.9 pounds and the other one was barely 1 pound. And that pissed me off because that was completely 1,000% unfair because I was told one thing and then it was changed. These rules that you're talking about, Matt, there has been below level crap going on since the beginning of this sport. And it's never a fair playing field. No matter what rules they put in place, it's never fair. And if you are an aspiring professional bass angler and you want to be a pro bass angler, not you personally, Matt, or Todd.
Unfortunately, I'm still aspiring.
I'm talking about you know, the you as the general public.
Yes.
You should be able to go on any lake, anywhere, anytime, and figure out how to catch a freaking bass. Otherwise, you got no business being in the sport. If I do good and I win money because someone told me and gave me places to go, that's not my win. I wouldn't even feel good about doing that. It's not my win. And so I think the problem, the reason this rule comes as is such a problem is because it's way deeper than the new change as of however long, a week or two ago.
Yeah. Okay. So let me say this. Go ahead, Todd.
And what Frank's saying is that, like, you asked him, would you care if, like, would I care about this rule? I wouldn't, because I don't care about info, and info doesn't. So it wouldn't bother me. But right? But it's
100%.
irrelevant because
But it should bother you because if now they can't do it, wouldn't you rather that rule have been in place so there is nobody that's getting information? You're like, well, why for 3 months? If I'm getting no information, why could guys get it for 3 months and they didn't just have this rule from the beginning?
I'm 1,000,000% yes. However, like Frank said, every tournament I entered, I know that there's some weird, crazy, unfair advantage, and it's been going on forever. And I don't like that's what I've signed up for all these years. And it's sad that that's the case, but it is the case. However, the unfair advantage I've grown accustomed to, and it does not bother me one bit. When I say unfair advantage, that would be a long road to go down. But Frank we both understand what the unfair advantage we're thinking of.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily the not cheating. What we don't like is when the unfair advantage happens. To me, the worst part is then they find out about it and nothing gets done. Or the opposite. And the opposite is what happened to Frank, where you did nothing, right? You did nothing to try to gain an advantage. And then you all of a sudden got like, I don't know what even the word, stepped on, like said, no, now you don't get to do what you were doing.
Yeah.
and the opposite of what Frank said has happened in an open where there was clearly an off limits that everyone in the tournament knew about. And then the guy went up to the tournament director. And this is a high profile guy, went up there so no one could hear him after the tournament meeting and said, oh, by the way, I'm going to be fishing right here. Oh, these ropes and these buoys really don't mean anything. You can just tie up to them. They're not really, you can throw over them. That's not really what they're there for. And then won the event. And we were all there for that event. Or I don't know who was there for that event, but it was in your state. And I'm just telling you, it was like, you have those things happen over and over. And these things happen, Frank, don't you agree? So many tournaments that after a while, you give up on it. You just give up.
Dusty Lapierre. Sounds French. Why are you complaining because you waited around to get information? Don't hate on the guys that didn't. You are pissed because you're going to make calls and now you can't. Which one of you guys wants to tackle that? He's
not. It had nothing.
No.
Missing the entire point of the last 1 hour and 18 minutes of conversation that we just had on this show. If that is a legitimate question right now.
Todd, go take it.
He's not. Once again, because I deal with this all the time on YouTube. They focus on one thing and then they don't listen to anything else that's being said. It's the fact that they should have started with whatever it was. Matt was fine if they kept the rules the same way.
Right.
Even the same way, no matter what they were. No info or all the info in the world. It doesn't matter. Just keep them the same. Because what he doesn't understand is it could start with anything. Next thing you know, you could like look up and go, hey, by the way, we're only going to change it to one practice day now. What? Like, so you act like this is a one-time thing. This happens all the time. They change stuff. We don't like that. Just keep it the same.
Exactly.
That's all I want. I want fair and balanced across the field. I think you have the Elite Series that went through this with a rule change, with information with that. It led to the formation of this. They literally had a revolt. They're ready to park their damn boats over it. All we asked for on the Bass Pro Tour, the Invitationals, the Toyotas, the Elite Series, and the Bassmaster Opens is when we pay our entry fee, you have to assume it's utopian. You can't there's something that works outside the laws whenever it is. You guys mentioned that. That, but you are under the assumption and the organization, what you are paying for is that for-profit organization to provide you a fair and balanced playing field to the best of their abilities. That's all it comes down to. That's all we're asking for.
And if they had made a rule and that all of us go, and that's what you're asking me, like, have I ever called the tournament director? I'm like, hey, this rule doesn't sound right. And we go, and none of us think it's right. Like, none of us, like, hey, you worded it wrong. And we all agree, like, okay, now you made it the right rule.
Mm-hmm.
This was a bad rule to begin with.
That was made even worse.
That was made worse, correct. And then you changed it up on everyone. And and I don't think anyone's sitting there going, oh, well, this is not that it's not better now, but like it's just a bad.
So here's what scares me, gentlemen. I want to get your take on both of this. We all have an option on where we fish. And because of things that happened in 2019, I've chosen to fish with Bassmaster. Still respect MLF. I love everything. Okay, let me rephrase that. There's a lot of good things that they're doing over there. I respect it. I'm to the point now where I have looked into fishing MLF events, whether it be a Toyota here or there or BFL here or there, right? So I chose to take my business personally to Bassmaster. Your job, it is a for-profit business to where you have customers. And the problem is there's really not many options out there for the customers. And it's been shown on the West Coast. It's been shown through other tournament trails and things like that. Like, how, as paying customers to this, do we separate our deep-seated love of the game and love of look at the brand right here. I have my Bassmaster Life Member Certificate right there. I've got the Brian Kirchhoff fish whistle. I've got the Bass Boss. Bassmaster is ingrained to me. How do you separate that from I'm a business person that's doing what's best for my business and I'm doing this for the love of the sport? Because I feel like that's almost a get out of jail free card in some instances because of the emotional attachment we have to the company and the tradition. And if that had happened in the restaurant business or in a retail store or anything, you'd be like, I ain't shopping here anymore.
You want to?
No, go ahead, Frank.
Okay, so but now you're talking about utilizing it for your business,
right?
Okay, so in my world, business is business, and to be honest with you, it's all about profitability. Okay, if you need the other tournament trails to make what you're doing for a living more profitable, then you have to take it. It's not a love loss. It's a business decision. You could still I love bass. I'm a bass guy through and through. There's things I hated along the way. There's things I loved along the way. But in my world, my business was the business of fishing. And I fished FLW events. I fished some tour events. I potlucked a lot of them. A business decision is a business decision. I don't slam one tournament trail over another tournament trail, and neither do you, Matt. Mm-hmm. But business is business. You have to run your business to make money, or why are you running a business in the first place?
But and I'm running a business, Matt. And so same thing, like Bass can run their business the way they want to, but I mean, like I have the luxury of fishing what I want. So I had the luxury of fishing an Open or a Toyota. I chose the Toyota because of different things. Like I could make more money in other tournaments leading up to the Toyota and it wasn't off limits. And then there are other, right? So I look at my entire schedule. I've done this throughout my entire career. Now, the problem is you've got guys that are trying to make money, right? You want to really make everyone mad, Frank?
Do it.
If more people looked at it as a business to actually make money, right, that it would go so much better. But the problem is you've got so many people that are losing crazy amounts of money, and they can, because it's not a business to them. They don't care if they make money or not.
Right.
A hobby.
Right.
And it's a pride and an ego thing. Then they will always, in turn, actually hurt everything. It's not their fault, but they don't care about any of this stuff. They don't they're just out there doing it for whatever reason. And that's okay. Like, it's not a big deal, but that doesn't help everything go smoothly. And so, yeah, and there's not enough of the guys trying to make a business because there's always enough guys that'll do the other. And they'll show up.
Right.
Despite all the bad, I don't care if it's the money looks bad, the rules look bad, all that stuff, they'll keep showing up.
Yeah, it's true.
And it's just part of it. And that's okay. Like, I don't get upset about it. I don't care anymore. Like, just run your business the way you want to, and you'll be your business. Like, Matt, you might do things a certain way that help you out on the BTL. We talked about that. Like, I might what I choose might be better for me than traveling all across the country, right? I mean,
yeah, you made a business decision to stop fishing the invitationals at the top level of it. Frank's made business decisions in your life. I mean, you had an invite and you had some title sponsor money where you're like, hey, this is a business decision. I could be out. I could still fish it, but because of this, I'm choosing this. It's all, we all make business decisions. All right. Closing segment. Here's what I want to do. If we bitch about something, you have to offer a solution. You have to give something back to that industry. I've got two, in my opinion, of the brightest and most educated people in the industry that have looked at it from like, no, seriously, like, you guys are independent contractors. So I don't think people realize, between Todd and Frank, every single person has something in their boat or tackle box right now that one of you two either painted or designed. And I'll stand by that. And you don't know it, because you guys aren't out there going, look what I did. Look what I did. But I mean, very influential in the industry, both on and off the water. So I want to provide solutions to this. I didn't want this to come on and just say, screw Bassmaster, we hate him. I can't believe they do. They've had a lot of stuff piled on them. And I've always been, and I've talked about this with other anglers, is I want the platform that I fish for to be the strongest, to be the most reputable, to be the most reliable. I want people coming to Bassmaster. I want trust in Bassmaster. I want non-endemic and endemic sponsors to say, if I'm giving my money to this angler that's fishing this platform, if I'm giving my money to this organization that has this platform, I want to have confidence that it's going to be there. It's going to be reputable. Never understood the why would you tear down the platform that you fish for. However, I agree with that, Todd.
Yeah, I do.
But at the same time, I also think you need to hold them accountable for decisions that you do not understand. Like, nothing has been out about this rule change. No one has talked about it. It hasn't been out anywhere. But I think it needs to be, because unless you're in the Bassmaster Opens, this doesn't affect you. So why should you like care about this? It's 300 open guys. Half of them that got the information are like, okay, cool. Yeah, no, they changed it. We're ahead of the game. But, as a whole, why should you care? I think that's what we just established over the last hour and a half with you guys. Solutions, though. Solutions to this specific problem with the information. What do you think should have been done? What can be done? We've seen Bass go back and retroactively change things, Todd.
They won't do it. They don't need to ask open anglers. They don't need to ask elite anglers. I honestly think, and they've had, like, I think their ego is going to get in their way. Sorry, I'm going to say it, but they really need to reach out to a couple people and say, hey, and just ask them. They don't want to. I don't understand why, but I don't understand why they wouldn't seek out someone that's knowledgeable and be like, hey, like, here it is. Here's what we're thinking about doing, or why wouldn't you, if it was me, why wouldn't you get those set of rules and be like, if they send them to me and Frank, I promise you, right? And me and Frank don't exactly speak, but I mean, like, talk to each other. But I guarantee you, if they set out the rules, me and Frank would have a red pen and go, and probably circled one or two things going, what are you doing here? Like, everything looks great, but what about this? This doesn't make any sense. This isn't a hard rule. This isn't like fine print. This was pretty, like, obvious. I don't understand why they wouldn't ask that or do that.
Yeah, I don't understand that either, because the reality of it is they tried to put so much in it, it became completely ambiguous. Every word, every blah, blah, blah. It's just this big wavy line. So where does it really fall into play? I mean, my solution, just get rid of the off limits and be done with it. Let the guys fish. Let them have at it. If you got time, if you could spend a week on the lake, good for you. Because here, look, if a guy's going to get information, he's probably not a guy that's going to spend time fishing on the lake. Okay, he's just going to take the McDonald's way. Hey, give me 30 waypoints, please. Thank you. And pick it up at the drive-thru and go on his way. A guy that's going to work at it is going to work at it and figure stuff out. That kind of brings the playing field back to more level, because of the fact that you could put more time in means you could figure more stuff out. to say, hey, we're going to a 3-day practice and no, you can't, there's a 1 month off limits and blah, 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 blah. The more shit you stack on the back end of it, the more problems you have getting towards the end result. I just think it's not complicated. Just make no off limits. Let the guys have at it.
Well, as far as this specific issue with the changing of the off limits rules, what concerns me is what Todd just said. If there was so, I don't know who came down with this rule. I don't know who it was run by before it was okayed. I don't know the genesis of this rule change, but I do know this. If you had educated tournament anglers at a high level in the room that were part of that decision-making process, there is no way that this would have gotten out and would have been included in the rules. A mid-season rule change to make the playing field. There is no way that had that been part of the decision-making process, that would have gotten by a high-end tournament angler who understands how the process works. Agreed?
Yes. And let me say this. I don't mind, like, rules are there to help you, not hurt you. Okay.
Yes.
So all the rules are there just to let you know what you can and cannot do. None of this matters, by the way. Okay. And this is where me and Frank kind of talked about this uneven playing field. None of this matters if all the rules that are written, we already know they're going to be broken. 100%. That's not even the problem. I guarantee me and Frank don't have a problem with them breaking the rules.
And you can't fix that. That's why you can't. I mean, it's
sounds crazy, right?
About.
Like if I got cut off right now, everyone would be like, "What do you mean you don't have a problem breaking the rules?" Rules are going to get broken. They're going to get gray areaed and everything else. Problem is, for all those years, Frank knows too, they didn't do anything about it.
Right.
And that's like, so I don't like, that's the problem. You can put all those rules up there, but when you didn't enforce them for all these years and they're all, man, if you put rules in there, I don't care what rule you put in there. I don't care what it is. And you enforce that rule, man, you would see a drastic change.
Yeah.
In the way people viewed these rules.
Yeah. Because accountability will correct it.
One of the things that I talked about when that you mentioned, Todd, that I think is brilliant. It would be it would literally be an easy fix, just like what happened on the Elite Series where they had those 3 days when they were like, hey, you could get information. There were guys that got it. I think this is clearly an uneven playing field. And you said, oh, well, there's a easy solution to this. Here's what they should have done in this email instead of using the words effective upon receipt or once these rules are published. This would have been such a small tweak that would have 100% handled any dissent, disgruntlement, dissension, or unequal playing field with this. What was it, Todd?
I don't know. What did I say?
You said why in that email, instead of using the words upon receipt of this email or upon publication, did they not say at midnight on January 20th, you can no longer receive, barter, or trade for any information on the Elite Series for the remainder of the season. Yeah. Instead of immediately where they hit it. That is such an easy fix to this solution that when you said it, I was like, my God, like,
this sounds better now that I'm hearing it.
Literally, all it had to say is, hey, we understand that this is a change, like they said, from the originally published rules. As such, as of January 20th at midnight or whatever day it is, give us 3 days, 5 days, 7 days, whatever. You can no longer receive information for the remainder of the season.
Matt, make sure everyone knows what you're talking about. So y'all got that email on a certain date. If they just, and then that email was your cutoff, right? You're right. I remember saying that. I was like, hey, if you're like, hey, here's the problem with the rule. We messed up, whatever. Okay?
We understand that this represents a transition from the previous rule. This written clarification is effective immediately upon receipt of this email.
If you'd have said, to make this fair, we're giving you 3 extra days to do whatever you need to do, and upon that date, legally, it goes into effect. That way, everyone's not caught off guard. No one's like, If someone was like, well, hey man, I've got 3 months to call you. Now it's like, okay, take care of it. Now everyone after the thing is like, we all had our chance to do what everyone else was able to do. Man, that guy you talked to was really smart.
That was you, Todd. And here's what I want to clarify. Frank talks about information and not being able to make it. I don't give a damn. You are living under a rock if you think that there isn't a single tournament fisherman in history that if they have the ability and are headed to a fishery that they've never been to in a part of the country and they've got a buddy that lives there, they don't call him up along the way and say, hey, what's up, man? Anything I need to know about Lake X before I jump on it? Todd, even you are going to do that. I know that. Unless you are intentionally going there with a blank slate, which you're so far off the wall, you probably do that, which is why it works and you've made $8 billion. But 99% of anglers, right, Frank? Guys who've won Angler of the Years, guys who've won that, if you can, if it is 100% legal, don't you want some sort of general information as you go there?
Like I said, if I got time to practice, I don't care.
Don't care.
As long as I got the time to practice, I don't care.
Matt, and here's why. Like, over the years, what I've realized, and probably the way I fish and the way Frank fishes is probably not the same. And I guarantee you the way me and him fish are different from you. So I know that for a fact, Matt. So
Dude, we still need to do that series.
So
we need to do that series.
All the stuff that I do, it would be nice, but in all honesty, it really wouldn't matter, because like it might not matter. Like it wouldn't matter most of the time.
Yeah,
I
still think the series Todd teaches Matt how to fish, where you just stayed at the back and go, and just berate me for my decisions on a body of water I'd never been to, that it would go viral, because I would reach a point where I would eventually kind of
lash out,
mentally break down. And then Todd would have me. I'd just be like a puddle on the front deck.
No, you'd lash out. You'd be beating him to death with a flipping stick.
There's no way. Have you seen Todd? He's like 1% body fat. I'm not beating his ass. He still has like a 36-inch vertical and plays sand volleyball, and he's in his mid-40s.
Outstanding.
I think you'd be surprised about some of the info stuff and what you think.
It's like a pound of kale every single day.
I don't know. I don't eat healthy. I just
stay active.
You'd be surprised, Matt, because like I'll be honest, like half the rule stuff, like everyone always goes, and this is maybe a little bit different because we don't travel, but like here in Texas, me and Russell, we call no one on any of these lakes. And even if we've never been in Texas and go fishing, and I'll be honest with you, one of the reasons is we don't want to do like, I'll pat your back, you pat mine. And this is going to, so
do it.
The
You're
reason
in
is if I
got
call
like 10 minutes,
some lake and they're not like the best fisherman on that lake, and they give us some stuff, and we've been to so many of those places where you get there, right? And any of that stuff they give you is like community hold, this, that, and you're like, oh, that was all worthless. And then we don't want to get that phone call a month from now and go, hey, well, I'm coming to Rayburn, so what you got?
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
So me and Russell always just looked at it as like, nah, no reason to, like, it's not even worth it for you calling us. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, I'd rather just like, that way those guys aren't so calling me, because so many guys are like, you get a lot of phone calls when the opens come. I'm like, zero.
Yeah.
No one calls me.
That's great, dude. When I stopped fishing Bassmasters, every time they come up to the Great Lakes, my phone would ring off the hook. And I would be like, no. What do you mean, no? I said, no, I'm not doing it. If I do it for one, I got to do it for everyone.
Right.
And I killed myself to find this stuff. Like literally, it took me decades to find the littlest, nothingest producing places. Why I am not and for one season, the phone calls I got were out of control, and then I never got another one.
And so if you don't get phone calls or you tell them no, like that's why they're like, no one calls me, zero. No one calls me, but I don't call them. So it's great. Like, so we're great. Like it's a great We don't have the time, but Frank, there's such a, I would probably out this person too, the guy who did it, because he fished the elites for a second.
Oh
But
my God, if you and Frank had that conversation.
oh my
we
God.
may have
Oh my God.
Well, Frank said one thing about how hard he worked for those spots. Like,
Yeah.
I agree. I'm just telling you, there was a guy calling me up asking for info, like long time ago, and I did it for a buddy. It was a buddy of a buddy who fished the elites, and I gave him all this stuff. He ends up almost winning. He might have won. I don't know if he won the event on the lake or not. He did really, really good.
Mhm.
And after the event, I congratulated him and everything like that, because I didn't really know him. And I asked, like, did you catch some fish off any of the stuff? He's like, yeah, like this and this. And I'm like, oh, what else happened? He kind of went into it. I'm like, man, where were you right there? He goes, hey, man, I put in a lot of blood, sweat, and tears out there. Like, what he wouldn't share with me, he did it. And I wasn't really asking to, like, oh, I better know this. Like, I didn't have a tournament coming up. But he started saying about how hard he worked to find these spots in 3 days after calling me up. And I was going, I was in shock. I was like, not a problem. I've been waiting on that phone call for him to call me again, ask me something. And I was going to, y'all don't even want to know this stuff. Oh,
and Todd, dollars to a donut. The blood, sweat, and tears was probably 30 yards away from your place you told him to go.
Oh.
You know what I mean? It's like,
I couldn't believe he said it to me. And I'm like, I'm telling you, my mind's a little diabolical. I swear, if he ever called me, I was gonna be like, yeah, man, I'll be honest with you. I was like, I'll tell you, I'll give you these holes. And I was gonna give him about 100 waypoints, and every one of them was gonna be bad.
Everyone's just out in the middle of nowhere.
Just like stuff I've never caught a fish. And then after the tournament, like, you catch anything out there? I'm like, yeah, I didn't really want to give you my good stuff because I'd put a lot of hard work and sweat out there. That's the way my mind works. I'm not gonna lie. I've been waiting on this phone call. I might get it.
Oh, you might get it now for sure.
Yeah. Oh, gosh, that's good. Yeah, Frank, you need to be careful too. You've got some freaking gems.
Yeah,
you got to be careful. Listen, I'll say I find this interesting. So I have done literally everything. I have gotten and all legal, obviously. I've gotten information from people that have hit me up on Instagram. I've gotten information from friends. This past year, I flew down to Florida and went out with someone who not only showed me how to run it, but showed me areas. I've also showed up to lakes not knowing anything and gotten absolutely zero information. I've gotten general information. I've done literally everything across the board that you can. So, I mean, I'm not hiding saying that I have not, I'm trying to figure out what I've just have tried everything.
Yeah, go ahead.
I've always, Matt, you've heard me say this. The best information I could ever get is this. If I could ask this for every tournament, it's this one. Wherever the boat ramp is, if I could just be like, hey, which direction should I turn? And if they go left or go right, to me, that's like gold.
Yeah, money.
Yep. So
money.
I would say over the past 3 years, what I have found is just say, can I win the tournament in this section of the lake? And if the answer is yes, I just had a conversation with someone about this yesterday, called it like the eyesight. If the answer is yes, then I stay in that section of the lake. That's what I ask you, Frank, on Lake Norman. It's a giant lake, and you're giving me generals, and I just said, can I win it in this section of the lake? And you said, absolutely. And I said, that's all I need to know. I'll figure it out from there.
Frank, I'd never been to Champlain before. And I literally went up there with, like, I knew nothing. Like, I had heard of Ticonderoga and then nothing else. Never heard of anything else. That's how I went there for the tour event. And I get out there, and I drive out of wherever the boat ramp is we're taking out of, and I'm looking around at this massive body of water, and I go, I guess I'll just go left. And so that's where I went. And I caught, I caught fish and everything. And then after the event or something, I was talking to, it might have been Dudley or something. And I was going, I saw, like, what's down on I caught all my fish this way. And he goes, oh yeah, well, I mean, you can't, like, catch a fish for like 30 miles if you would have went right. And I'm like, seriously? I had no idea. He was like, I mean, it's not like you went the right way, luckily. And I'm like, well, I just happened to go left. but I was like, God, I could have spent a whole day or two to the right and not known that I wasn't really where I was supposed to be.
Oh yeah, 100%. That's 100%.
But I didn't know. I mean, I got lucky.
Yeah, the first time I ever fished the place, I just pulled out my topographical maps and I was looking at it. I'm going, well, there's so much right here. I'm going that way. And I did the same thing. I went left and found fish like mad. And I'm like, oh, cool. I don't have to run 90 miles to Ticonderoga. So, I mean,
that's it. So I fished the Bass Nation, and here's what I did. Before the off limits, I called up someone. I said, can I win this thing in the inland sea? And they said, yes. Oh, I said, can I top 20 in the inland sea? Because that's what got me to the national championship on Grand.
The Dead Sea?
The inland sea.
Inland sea on
I called it the Dead Sea because I didn't know what that was. And someone told me what it was.
And he said, yes.
There's no fish in there.
And so I literally just went to the inland sea. And I spent 3 days practicing in the inland sea. I didn't know where to go in the inland sea, nothing or anything. He said yes. And I went there and figured, and that's where I ended up catching him. So that was my strategy with it. So yes, that was general information. Would I have gotten there? I mean, dude, you can do a little bit of research and see.
No, I call it
quick.
the Dead Sea. Matt, I call it the Dead Sea because like it was the only
95% of it was dead when I was there, but I happened to find the 5% that wasn't.
So I didn't know until later. Now, if someone said, but that would have been a big deal if someone had said, hey, this is where it's good there. But I didn't have that. So I went in there. There's the only place I never caught a fish. And I'm like, this is horrible. And I couldn't wait to get out of there. See,
the first tournament I ever fished there, I wound up taking 7th or 8th out of the inland sea. And I never could catch them there again to win after that. And so then I started branching out and going in other places. That lake is so cool, dude. I mean, it's you could do almost anything you want to do in that lake. It's one of my favorite places to fish now. It's so cool. It's such a good fishery.
All right, dude. Okay, we got to get both of you.
Hey, Matt, I appreciate
Mexico.
I like how yesterday you said, hey, we're going to do this thing at 8:30. We're going to be like 30 minutes and we'll get in and out of there. That's all right, cool.
Never sorry. Happens. Did I keep you? Are you in trouble?
No, I got nothing. I don't know. I guess not. What do I got to do?
Yeah, you're your own boss, dude.
Well, I'm supposed to, like I said, I push it back to 11:30. I'll be live at 11:30 with that. But guys, this is the type of stuff that like I invaluable resources in both of you. Like I said, I saw Frank jump on the instant feedback there, and Todd, me and you were chatting, and I was like, well, let's just do a live show. I wasn't even planning on doing one this morning. I woke up at 8:05. Frank and I are like that. Frank and I need like at least an hour and a half, 2 hours in the morning to get settled, prepared, not rushed. My phone died, Frank. I woke up at 8:10 this morning.
Perfect. I'm not a last minute morning guy either. When I fished the tour, my alarm never woke me up. I was up before it always. When I stopped fishing, ironically enough, when I stopped fishing Bassmasters for the longest time, I kept getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning every day. And then all of a sudden I noticed that now I'm getting up at 5 and now I'm getting up at 6, and it's like, holy shit, it's 6:30. I'm still laying in bed. I'm like, something's wrong. So I started setting my alarm clock for 6 o'clock every morning to make sure I'm up and out of bed. That's what happens. You get your whole chemistry changes when you're not up every day that early.
Before we close, I do want to give an open invite to anybody at Bassmaster who had a hand in these rule changes, who had a hand in this. What? Why are you guys laughing at that? I'm dead serious.
I know you are.
I want to give an open invitation. Look, I'll look straight in the camera and say it because I have all my stuff here I'm working. An open invitation, non-biased. BTL will give you the platform to explain these rule changes and why they were made. I want someone who was in that room, who had a hand in making those rules. Not a hostile thing. I would just an open invitation to come on and explain yourself.
Can I come on and ask questions?
No. So that one will just let them say their piece. What I'm hoping is that they're going, hey, there's an aspect to this that you guys haven't thought about. This is why we had to do it. Our hands were tied. We know it's a bad situation, to where I can go, okay, That was the best option that was available. That was the only option that they had to combat something else, is what I'm hoping. So open invitation. I do that a lot. No hostility, nothing towards it. I still trust Bassmaster. I still choose to fish with them. I still have all the Bassmaster stuff up. I still love the organization.
No, Bassmasters is not the enemy, guys.
No,
it's not. I mean, the anglers we're our own worst nightmares sometimes.
absolutely.
Everyone always thinks that I kind of get on some of these organizations, and I'm like, look, man, I just want them to do good. That's why I'm not in favor of like angler driven boards, because I think decisions get made by anglers for anglers, like individual
100%.
anglers. And my whole deal is, and I've always said this to any tournament organization, that when you listen to those opinions or anything, you always got to be like, is this for the organization to succeed or for the anglers to succeed? And in my opinion, it's always been, if the organization is doing awesome and everything's going good, then me as an angler it's going to be good for me. And so I always want organizations to do better, because I think it's going to be better for me. And that's where I think I can strive in that. So I'm always wanting organizations to do better in that regard. So, I mean, but like I said, the angler stuff, man, you got to be careful with that, because it's usually somewhere in the back of their mind, like, well, if we make this rule, it's going to benefit me.
Yeah.
And usually that's where it all goes downhill. So like, that's why I said, get someone that's not an elite guy, not an open guy. Get someone that, hey, this is something that makes sense for the organization and all the anglers, not one.
Todd, Bassmaster should hire you as a consultant. And every quarter you go in, you sit in on rule changes and stuff. You sit in the corner, you eat snacks and fruit snacks, and they give you little juicy juice boxes. And then every hour they say, Todd, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. And then if it's so bad, then you can have me on there and go, Todd, what were you thinking? Letting them do that rule.
Are you out of your mind?
Yeah,
Picture you in the corner sitting there going
the
on a
worst
juice
part
box and just waiting for your turn to drill this new rule that they've been freaking hatching out for the last hour.
I would probably quit in the first 30, or like the first time that we had that, and go, this is what, Todd, what do you think? Well, why don't you just do it this way and it'd be great? And they're like, okay. And I'm sitting there minding my own business. Everyone knows. And then the rule comes out and it's not what I said. I'd be like, everyone would be calling me. I'm like, all right, see y'all later, guys. I'm never doing that again.
Yeah.
I get thrown under the bus so quick.
We could talk about that too.
All right. We do have to wrap it up, unfortunately. We're 2 hours into this show. We're going to reset things. I'm going to get this show out. Thank you. We have 350 people watching live. You know, it's a good show when the number goes up as the show goes on. So this will be out. It's a good discussion point. Interested to see and hear what you all think. That is a perfect opportunity for the comment box below on YouTube. I do read all those. Yeah, even
That's
Steve's.
Just
What's
always
that?
add on Frank. If you add on Frank midway through the show, it can always go up. It's perfect.
Yeah,
You're a nice guy.
That's the business plan, Matt. That's your business plan.
Trust me, Frank is intricately woven into my business plan for the foreseeable future.
Speaking of which, get that 16 dialed in today, dude, because I'm going to see you in a few days.
What day are you getting here? The 20th?
Yeah, but I got to get in early so we could watch Ohio State crush Notre Dame.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea. We'll do a crappie. Anyway, folks, I guess we'll announce it here. Frank's going to be here for like 8 days. So So Todd, you want to do another one of these things in the evening or whatever, just let us know and we'll just go live at night. But we're going to do all sorts of different BTL stuff. We're going to go crappie fish. We're going to bass fish. A lot of big stuff happening at BTL on multiple species.
I want to be priced for that Toyota, but I might have a couple of like some guys you might be surprised at hanging around the house maybe. So
yeah. No, that would be awesome. Greatly appreciate it. Thank you, Todd. Have a good morning.
All right. See y'all guys.
All right. See ya. Frank, thanks for jumping on the instant feedback there. Greatly appreciate it.
I appreciate the link, dude. I was stunned when the phone beeped and there was a link.
Well, I saw you make a comment there and I got no issues bringing people in on it, especially I
love Todd, man.
Yeah, no,
he's straight up, dude.
he's good.
I could talk to him for a decade.
Dude, before Leech, like I was a little spot, he literally like just like gave me like a 30-minute pep talk. I'm sitting there just like not even fishing related, like mental related, decision related, and whatever. And his buddy Blake was like, "Oh, like, I've always made a joke that Todd like hates me. Like he blew me off the first 4 times we ever had, like overtly blew me off, like looked at me and then moved chairs in disgust." So literally when that call hung up, Blake was like, "Dude, like Todd doesn't hate you. Like he wouldn't do that with someone that he hates." So that meant a lot for me. And then I went out and top 10'd it. And I'm not sure I would have top 10'd it because I vividly remember thinking on the water, this will show Todd as I'm catching him. Screw him. I'm doing it my way. And look, I can't wait till he looks at the damn leaderboard now. So, but all right, Thursday, we'll be back with another live show. Thank you, Frank.
Good luck with the
Have a good week.
All right, my man.
All right, thanks. All right, we're gonna do a reset, and then when we come back, it should be around 11:30. Live on the water from Shawnee Twin Lakes. If you want to learn how to set up your live scope, this is how it's going to go down. Like he's actually going to set mine up while it's live. Big shout out. That is the type of healthy discussion that I love on BTL. If you guys like this show, share it, thumbs up, follow the YouTube channel. Would love to get to 20,000. We're at 19.2. If you're watching this and you're not subscribed or you're just watching it on YouTube and you're not logged in, just create a Google account. Then you can get all sorts of stuff when we go live. Subscribe helps. If you're listening on iTunes, leave a review, a star review, a comment review. That stuff goes directly to the sponsors. Greatly appreciate it. Still have a big passion for this, and it's cool. Just being able to talk with guys like Todd, like Frank, who can offer a different perspective on it as we navigate the world of professional bass fishing. What is today? Today is Tuesday. I think I have a show for tomorrow. I'm not sure. Maybe this serves as a 2 show. I'll figure something out. I got to get on the water here and get things dialed in. So once again, thank you. Thumbs up, like, subscribe. This has been another edition of BTL Bass Talk Live. Same place, same time tomorrow. See ya.